Never would I ever think that me purchasing a Grand Seiko would give me so much hate from the Grand Seiko fanboys. In this video, we're going to talk about the in-depth review of my brand new Grand Seiko Quartz GMT and why it's actually a pretty awesome watch. And then at the very end of the video, we're going to talk about all the hate. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Chase and this is All Things Random, mostly watch reviews with some random stuff sprinkled in between. If you're here, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. It really does help the channel. It's free, doesn't cost you anything, but it definitely does help. Now, as always, the details first here in the beginning, then I will talk about my opinions and the backlash of me purchasing my own watch at the very end. The measurements of this watch come in at 39 millimeters in diameter, a lug-to-lug or overall footprint of the watch of 45.9, a case thickness of 12.3, and a bandwidth, sadly, of 19 millimeters. This means I wanted to put it on a high-quality Italian leather limited edition strap from Chase Straps, my own personal watch strap company, but I was unable to do so because of that weird 19 millimeter. The first con of this watch. But if you guys want to check out Chase Straps, link it down below. Now, walk around of the case. It is a brushed finish along the top, high polish with chamfered edges around the side. I do like the sweeping lugs and into the 3-linked brushed bracelet that goes down to a tri-fold clasp with a double push release. On the back, it does have a screw down case back. This thing does have 200 meters of water resistance, which makes it a perfect everyday watch. And on the front, you do have a double curved sapphire crystal with anti-reflective coating on the inner surface. Now, the dial of the watch appears black, but it actually is blue. So generally speaking, it looks like a black dial watch, something that flies under the radar. But then when you take it out in the sun, it actually has a beautiful blue reflective hue around the entire dial. It's actually quite lovely. The dial itself is done quite nicely with baton indices all the way around, an applied GS Grand Seiko just below the 12, the GMT just above the 6. You can see that it does have a red GMT hand, and the basic functionalities of the 9F Quartz is super simple. You unscrew that crown, which is, again, a screw-down crown, 200 meters of water resistance. I can't emphasize that enough. Pull the crown out once, and it goes into a true GMT function where only the hour hand of the watch moves. Pull it out again, and then you can adjust the time as desired. Now, outside the basic measurements of the watch, the case, the finishing is actually quite nice. Can understand why people always complain about the bracelet, but why did I buy the 9F Quartz movement instead of the spring drive? Well, outside of the fact that it's half the cost of a spring drive, I like the 9F Quartz for a few reasons. Now, let's go into what the 9F Quartz movement is and why it's so cool. Now, when the word quartz is thrown around, they think of that cheap $10 to $20 watch that you'd pick up from your local Walmart, but that's not what the caliber 9F is. In fact, even when I mentioned getting this watch in my last video, I bought a Grand Seiko. The idea that I should have just bought a cheap quartz Seiko was mentioned in the comments, along with so many other hilarious comments such as that. So what makes the caliber 9F so special? Well, first, Grand Seiko's 9F caliber is assembled entirely by hand by 2 different watchmakers. Everyone knows that quartz movement depends on a battery as a power source. The battery sends electricity to a quartz oscillator, which vibrates at precisely 32,768 times a second. An integrated circuit then detects the vibrations and sends an accurate timed signal to a step motor. Now, generally, the motors inside of quartz watches are extremely weak, so the hands are extremely small, very thin, and there's only so much finishing that can be done because of the weight of the hands themselves. Well, these are standard hands that you'd find on an automatic watch because automatic watches offer more torque and allow the time to be adjusted without actually affecting the accuracy. Well, because they use a twin pulse control motor, a high torque system, usually that's never seen in quartz watches, is used here. Now, outside of the fact that this watch is plus or minus 10 seconds of accuracy a year with a battery lifespan of up to 3 years, which means I'll never have to change the time until I have to change the battery. But that's not actually why I chose this quartz watch. Yes, I chose the quartz watch because I want to be able to set it and forget it. I said that in the last video. I want to be able to set the watch down and not have to worry about putting it on a watch winder. I don't have to worry about it being adjusted every time I pick it. If I put it down for a month, I know I'll pick it up and it's still going to be accurate to a couple seconds, which means I don't have to actually change the time. I really do like this, especially as a watch collector. Now, what I like the most about this watch is actually going to be the backlash system that has to deal with making sure the second hand hits the indices every single time. In no way, we've all had quartz watches that the second hand is all over the place. Well, this guarantees, the backlash system guarantees that the second hand hits every single marker every single time. It's something that every watch collector who wants to have a quartz watch has dreamt about. Now, the watch does offer basic lume, but unlike a dive watch, it's not completely illuminated at night. There's actually only lume on the hands and on the 12, the 3, the 6, and the 9. Anything else is just a reflection of those high polished baton indices around the dial. The watch comes in at 151 grams, so it does have quite a bit of heft, but a lot of people, especially my subscribers out there, have mentioned that they actually don't like light watches. They want a watch that they can feel on the wrist with some heft. So this does give you that. But if you want to limit the weight, change the bracelet to a strap. Now, here's the watch on my 7¼ inch wrist, and you can see that the footprint of 45.9 or 46 millimeters is actually quite nice to my average medium-sized wrist. In the sun or in the natural light, you can see the slight blue hue from that dial, and then, of course, when you come inside, it just looks like a standard black watch. I love the fact that it's almost like wearing two watches, a blue dial or a black dial. Now, what are my thoughts and opinions on this watch? Well, outside of all the hate from the Grand Seiko fanboys that we'll talk about in just a minute, I actually love the fact that I now have a Grand Seiko. Now, I have quite a extensive luxury watch collection, and I wanted one true quartz watch that was a luxury quartz watch that I wouldn't mind wearing, right? I didn't want to spend $1,000 on a Luminox that's a tough, rugged sports watch when I have plenty of sports watches. I wanted a GMT because I love to travel. I love to take my wife places where we can go travel. And I'm going to be doing some traveling coming up here for work. And I love the fact that this is a GMT. Not only is it a GMT, but it's a GMT with 200 meters of water resistance, which means this is the perfect everyday watch. Again, set it and forget it. I can put it in a watch box and grab it in 6 months, toss it on the wrist, hop on a plane, and it's going to be accurate to just a few seconds from when I placed it in the watch box. Now, a lot of people have said that Grand Seiko have been known to exaggerate when it comes to the accuracy of their quartz watches, that they're really not truly accurate, plus or minus 10 seconds a year when it comes to the 9F movement. Okay, well, let's just say it's plus or minus 30 seconds a year. Okay, so now that's way worse than 10 seconds a year, but 30 seconds a year is still just a few seconds a month. So that's still really accurate when it comes to setting this in a watch box and 6 months later grabbing it. It's quite nice. I love the fact that it also flies under the radar, and I love the fact that yeah, Grand Seiko does have great quality control when it comes to the dials. It does have great quality control when I looked up close to the indices. There's nothing on the inside of the dial that bothers me at all. Everything is done quite nicely. I get why people have some complaints about the bracelet. The bracelet's pretty meh. Now, it is a 3-linked bracelet, and the sad thing is there's no micro adjustments, which I think most people have complaints about, is the fact that there's no micro adjustments. It does have half links, and if you do want to micro adjust the back, you can use something called a watch back by Chase Straps, which is a small EVA foam pad that sits right on the backside of the watch case and gives an extra 1 to 2 millimeters of adjustment, kind of cushion underneath your watch, so it allows it, if it's slightly loose and falls down the wrist, to kind of adjust it just a little bit more. Now, why all the hate with this watch? I think it's kind of funny. Nico Leonard mentioned like a year ago, he's making fun of Seiko fanboys, how they're like sheep that just follow each other around and how they're slightly kind of crazy. And I always looked at Rolex owners sort of like that until I bought a Grand Seiko. And then my comment section is flooded with, oh, you bought the worst Grand Seiko. You should have bought the spring drive. You shouldn't have done this. You should have just bought a cheap watch instead because it's quartz. It was ridiculous. I own a Grand Seiko, and again, you bought the worst one. It's like, who cares? I don't understand why people get so upset. I bought the watch. You didn't buy the watch. I bought the watch, and I like it. And it's so funny how people get so upset at the choices you make with your money. It's like, what are you talking about? I've always been a person who says, buy what you like. Don't buy what other people like. That's why I don't want to buy a Rolex. I have a Rolex. I will never buy another one. If I was worth $100 million, I wouldn't buy a Rolex because that is the poor man's rich watch. A poor man looks at Rolex and says, you know what, I'm going to buy a Rolex because that's what rich people wear. Rich people don't wear Rolexes. Poor people and middle-class people buy Rolex, similar to Coach, right? Poor people and middle-class people think that rich people wear Coach or buy Coach and they use Coach products. The only people who buy Coach are poor and middle-class people, not rich people. There's other things that they buy instead. Similar to Rolex. So I'll never buy another Rolex. But Grand Seiko is sort of like an Omega, right? It is, when you buy an Omega, you don't buy an Omega because you're like, oh, like Omega is the best brand in the world. You buy it because you like the technical specifications. I bought this Grand Seiko because of the technical specifications, because if I was going to spend a bunch of money on a quartz watch, I wanted the best quartz watch that could last a lifetime. And who does it better than Grand Seiko when it comes to their 9F quartz? I don't think anybody else does, but I would love to hear your opinion down in the comments below. What do you think about the watch? Do you love it? So many people hate it. Don't really care. Leave a comment down below. I will respond to as many as I possibly can. If you're still here, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment, hit the notification bell. I got a lot of videos coming out in the future, and I'll see you in the next one.